Hi everyone, and welcome to the Cancer Weekly Illumination reading. This is I Am Illuminated Tarot and Meaning-Based Spiritual Coaching Services. I am Lauren. Hi and welcome. So this is a slightly new format for my readings in that I am a new mother and I am trying to change my schedule a little bit to accommodate more readings, but in a more condensed format. I will still be completing a more comprehensive spiritual purpose connection reading later on in the month for each sign. But for now, this is going to be the new format, and I'll be releasing one video per sign each week. So these readings are meant to help engage the core principles of curiosity, courage, and contemplation to help you engage your unique, internal, authentic, singular self with your unique external spiritual purpose. So what I'm going to do here to start the reading off is to pull a Power of Surrender card to help us engage with the core principle of curiosity. And why is it important to engage with curiosity? Well, it helps us open up, to help us get past the negative thought patterns that can become established as we move from childhood into adulthood, where we start to use phrases like, well, that's just the way I am and I can't change. That's just the way my circumstances are and they can't be changed. And instead, we're opening ourselves up to the what ifs, but the positive what ifs, the optimistic what ifs, the awe and wonder and magic that life holds in the way that we never are ever going to be able to know everything. And so we are continually learning about ourselves and learning about the mysteries that abound in our external environment. So that's what we're engaging here with curiosity. What do we not know about ourselves and our connection to our spiritual purpose that we're going to learn this week? So we have a card that came out here and it says surrender defensiveness. And it says defensiveness is a sign of weakness. To communicate in a more empowered way, stay centered and hear someone out. Then offer a clear, non-defensive response. So what we're going to do is we're going to build a question around this card and the message in this card to help ask yourself throughout the week to make this an individual reading for you, because this is a very general reading. But by building out a question that you ask yourself, it's a question that only you can answer for yourself. So we're bringing the message back to you. So surrender defensiveness. You know, the one thing I don't like about this card, and I know I've said this in previous readings, is that, you know, the first sentence here, defensiveness is a sign of weakness. That's not necessarily the case. I think a lot of times we get defensive, not out of a place of weakness, but out of a place of feeling like we understand our own truth and we want to express that. We want to come from a place where we want to defend our personal truth. And that can come across as defensive to another. Just like if you were talking to somebody and they were defending their own perspective and their own personal truth, you would understand where that's coming from. However, the message that's coming through to me here is really around personal truth, more than just being defensive or argumentative. There's this element here of, I really think there's some aspect of yourself that you are discovering or tapping back into. And when we start to do that, when we start to rediscover a part of ourselves, or when we start to just connect with our personal truth, and maybe perhaps we had not seen it as clearly or experienced it as clearly as we are in this moment, it's almost like opening up a wound. It was almost like having open heart surgery where you could imagine breaking open your chest and here's your beating heart, and there's this vulnerability to that experience, when you first realize, wow, this is what I believe, or this is my opinion on this, or this is what really creates meaning in my life. And then to have somebody come up to you and tell you that that viewpoint is not correct, or that truth is not truth, it's invalid. I mean, it would be almost like somebody coming up to your open heart and poking at it. And it can hurt. It can actually physically hurt when we start to move into engaging with our authentic self, which in turn is our truth, our personal truth. And we can, right off the bat, want to protect it, close that off, to push people away. And what I feel this card is really bringing forward for me, and for you guys to ask yourself this question, is what have you recently discovered about yourself? What is some aspect of your personal truth that you have been sitting with, that you want to share with others, that you want to engage with, that you are feeling almost called to engage with? And yet, where perhaps when someone maybe asks you about that, you instantly want to get defensive, and instead of just openly and almost non-judgmentally just saying, yeah, this is how I believe it, and if they don't believe what you believe, you're like, well, I hear you. I hear what you're saying, and I understand. In fact, I used to, maybe at one point you actually would have said the same thing to yourself. Maybe you've discovered personal truth that 20 years ago you would have laughed at yourself for having discovered. You would have laughed at somebody else who maybe who would have been coming from that viewpoint. And it's one of those things where it's almost like you have to realize now at this point that the beauty of discovering your own personal truth, or a new perspective, or something that is starting to bring color into your world, and by color I mean meaning, that's a beautiful thing. That's something that when you start to feel that sense of meaning around something within yourself, that's you engaging with your spiritual purpose. Now, you may not see the larger, I would say, picture, the big picture behind where that truth is going to lead you, but it's that simple feeling of, this makes me feel good. This gives my life meaning. This gives every action in my life meaning. And so there is this element here of understanding that you don't have to attack somebody who simply wants to come in and state their opinion the way that you have every right to state yours. And that sometimes just by simply being at peace within yourself towards this new, whatever it is, new truth, new perspective, that it allows others to actually engage in them seeing you more confident in sharing your truth. It allows them to feel at peace as well, to ask questions instead of to attack. Meaning, imagine if you did have your chest ripped open and your open beating heart is there, and somebody comes up to get really close to you, and you're like, get away, you're trying to attack my chest, trying to get to my heart. And the person's like, well, no, I'm just don't understand why you're not stitched up and your heart is beating and it doesn't look healthy. And you're like, oh, no, like, get away from me. Instead of listening to what the person's saying and saying, oh yeah, you're right. It does seem a little crazy, doesn't it? I know most people don't walk around with their chest wide open and their heart beating for everybody to see. But let me explain to you why I chose to be this way. And that's a much more empowered way of sharing a part of yourself that is open and vulnerable, but also hearing what the other person has to say in regards to allowing them to ask questions and to possibly even express worry for you. So, meaning, let's bring this into, instead of some crazy example like your chest is ripped open, let's bring it into something real. Let's say you have always maybe held one perspective. Maybe you were a member of a specific religion. And I know people I don't want to jump on that touchy subject, but it does happen throughout life that we go through these big changes. And these can be big perspective changes that end up uncovering and unlocking new parts about ourselves. And this is what actually helps keep us on track towards, again, engaging with our spiritual purpose. We're meant to change and evolve and grow. And so let's say you had been raised or had been following a specific religion for the majority of your life. And suddenly now you're maybe moving to another religion, or maybe doing something that is in direct opposition to the teachings of that religion, but it's something you feel called to do. Well, this is where you might have somebody in your life who is still perhaps practicing that religion, or somebody who's known you for a long period of time come up to you and say, well, why are you doing this? Why are you, why the sudden change? And are you going to just throw out all of the other beliefs you've been following this whole time? And I'm worried about you. I'm worried as to why there's been this shift. Now, you might take that as you're just attacking me. You don't see what I see. And in reality, that's correct. No person ever, whether past, present, or future, will ever share your exact perspective on life, because we each have our own singular purpose, our own singular possibilities and potentials, and our own singular perspective. All these P's, a lot of alliteration going on here. But there's this quality to that where you can actually sympathize with that person to say, no, I understand, or I'm sorry, not sympathize, but empathize with that person, where you can put yourselves in their shoes and say, I can understand what you're saying. If I had been on your side and watched you do the same thing maybe 5 years ago, I would have also been a little worried. I would have also have wondered where this came from. But I'm going to assure you, I'm going to thank you first for your worry. And I'm going to now explain to you the why behind my perspective shift, and why it's bringing me so much fulfillment, and why it's allowing me to help open up and grow a certain part of my life experience. And that's a much more empowered way. That's in stating something in that way, in this optimistic, confident way, you draw people in. You want people then to come in and then ask more questions, because that's how they get a chance to see through your eyes. Where if instead, when that person asks you, well, why are you doing this? Why are you focusing on, now this can be a direct example, would be maybe you were always following a specific faith that would look at tarot reading and intuitive reading as something negative. And that's what you're deciding to step into. And they might, you might be able to illuminate for somebody what this is all about. You can actually allow them to ask questions about tarot, about oracle cards, about how you receive intuitive messages. And in turn, and you just sharing a little bit about your experience and about what you're working with and about now this personal truth that's coming up because of it, you might allow somebody else to then walk away saying, gosh, I kind of want to look more into that. Instead of, if you just got so defensive and pushed them away, they're not only going to walk away from you, but they're also not going to walk away with any knowledge, with any wisdom, with any understanding. So, Cancer, I think this is going to be a kind of a really eye-opening week for you in learning, not learning specifically, but playing with how you communicate this new sense of personal truth, or this new perspective shift that's coming in, and how by simply just changing your communication style. Instead of immediately jumping to conclusions that everybody wants to attack you, jump to the alternative conclusion that the people who are coming to you now and expressing perhaps a little bit of are more worried and just curious, and that you can help actually illuminate for them what you've already started to illuminate for yourself. All right, now we're going to engage with the core principle of courage. And courage is where we get a chance to step into our personal place of self-empowerment. This is where we get a chance to engage with conscious decision and action taking. And what are we conscious of? We're conscious of our unique internal selves and how, when we make a decision or take an action, we are engaging that self with that action. Meaning, every day we make tons and tons and tons of little tiny decisions. And we can either, that's quite a few. Okay, I'm going to take just the one that fell on the floor there. We can engage with, we can move through our experience disengaged, meaning we're just kind of making off-the-cuff decisions and we're not actually feeling into ourselves when we make those decisions. So this can be something simple like you have the opportunity maybe in the day, maybe it's a weekend and you have the opportunity to rest, to build in some meditation time or take a nap. But instead of feeling into your body and being aware of yourself in that moment that maybe needs a rest, maybe you need that mental meditation time, that quiet contemplation time to just allow yourself to decompress, get back into your zone. You instead, when you're presented with the time to do that, or instead you're presented with maybe your friends call you up and say, hey, come meet us out for drinks someplace, or your significant other's like, hey, let's go out for a hike or work on a home project. But in reality, you need the rest. And if you would sit and check in with yourself before making that decision, you would realize that instead of maybe overextending yourself by going out with friends or working on a project that exhausts you. And so then you start the next work week already exhausted. And this is where every little tiny decision we make like that, when we're not aware of ourselves, this is when we can slip into a place of disconnection. We can slip into where we feel chronically tired. We can feel anxious because we don't understand. We're not being able to really understand where these negative maybe reactions are coming from, consequences in our life, because we're not engaged with actually realizing, oh, that's because of a choice I made, an action I took. That's why I'm getting this negative response. So we're bringing the power back to you, back to the one thing in our experience that you can control, which is yourself. You can control the actions that you take. You can't control another, and you cannot control your external environment, because the one constant in our environment is change. It's that I like to look at our external environment and the people within it as destiny. This is kind of what we are just at the mercy of. But where we bring the control back to ourselves is our seat of free will. And this is where we get to engage free will with destiny to be able to experience our unique spiritual purpose. And when we bring the power back to ourselves and the awareness to the actions we take, this is where we get a chance to step into that seat of courage to say, actually, sweetheart, no, I'm not going to help you with that project right now because I need to take a nap. I need to meditate quietly alone. So we have for a message around taking action this week. We have cow spirit. The miracles are endless. Number 15, breaking down to a 6. I love this card. Miracles are endless, which I think is fantastic to keep in mind when we are thinking about what we were talking about for curiosity here, is when you're thinking about taking action on your own behalf, coming from this positive place of miracles happen every day. That's the beauty of what curiosity allows us to tap into, is that we will never know everything about everything. So we have to really be able to stay in that optimistic place of, well, if anything can happen, why not the most amazing things? Instead of going down that negative thought pattern of, well, what if this happens and it's negative and negative and negative? We go down the other what if path of, oh my gosh, what if this happens? And what if that could happen? And then we get into this beautiful snowball of, like imagination, instead of the snowball of fear and anxiety. So there's this quality here of, behind every action you take this week, step into that place of courage that's backed by the miracles are endless. And it goes hand in hand with the question you're asking yourself is, where are you finding, what is that new truth? What is that new perspective that you want to share? Or what is that new, even truth just in opening yourself up to taking action? Like, let's say the new truth is for you, like myself, I'm a new parent. The truth is I'm a mother now, and I have a family to take care of. And maybe that truth now, again, I was not a mother before. That was not part of my personal truth. But now this week, I have to take action with that personal truth in mind. And in order for me, maybe now I feel like, okay, I have just expanded my family. And part of that expansion is admitting to myself that I need to move into a larger space. And that can be scary. That can, in leading me down that, that path, I can, when somebody, let me slow my roll. Speak coherently. Sorry, guys. So where this might manifest as kind of what we're talking about, getting defensive. So let's say I know in the back of my mind, shoot, I have a new member of my household now, and maybe me and my spouse were living in a one-bedroom apartment. But now I know that a one-bedroom apartment isn't going to last too long now that we have a third member added to our home. And I know that it's time to make that big decision to move into a larger place. And I'm sitting with that, and I'm sitting with it and sitting with it. And I know it's going to mean that there's going to have to be a change. And I know that that could be scary because, again, it could mean more money going out. It can mean us having to go down that rabbit or that path of having to find a place, and what if that new place isn't in the ideal location, and yada and so forth. And here I am going down a rabbit hole of worry, so that when somebody comes up and says, oh man, you just had a baby? Gosh, you guys must be living on top of each other. How do you do it living in such a small space? And you instantly snap at that person. Well, we're just trying to save money, and we're going to do this for this long, and instead of saying, you're right, actually, but I know we do need to move, and I know that, our family has expanded, and I'm really excited at the prospect of being able to move into a larger space, but we're just starting that process. Would you, by any chance, have any recommendations as to maybe how we could start that process? Or do you know a real estate agent who could help us maybe find a home? It's a much more engaging way instead of just snapping at that person and shutting them down. In addition to that, you can start to think, instead of worrying like, oh gosh, I know I have to move, you can start to think on the other side of, wow, this change is opening up this new aspect of my life. I've lived in this one-bedroom apartment for 5 years now. It's time for a change. What is this going to bring me? Where will I get a chance to live? What's the new location going to look like? And what am I going to be able to upgrade that I don't currently have? And this is where we can try to start to step into more of the positive aspects as well. So we're taking action to change our perspective from maybe one of worry around this new truth that's come in for us to one of acceptance and positivity and understanding that I have to engage with this part of myself now. I have to engage with this new part of my personal truth, because it is going to continue to lead me down the path of my spiritual purpose. Everything that happens to ourselves, as long as we are taking conscious action, we get to then continue to evolve and grow with our life. It's almost like coming to a path that looks like it's at a dead end. And you can either make the decision to kind of continue to go a little bit further through the trees to see if the path picks up again, or you just turn around and go back the same way and you experience all the same things and nothing new. And this is where, when we continue to kind of grow and adapt with the changes, but we continue to adapt, we continue to engage with whatever's new with ourselves at that moment. So let's say you do come to the end of a path and it looks like a dead end, but you look over and you notice that there's a axe or a chainsaw right next to you, and there's a bunch of trees in front of you. Well, you can take action to say, well, my new truth now is that there is that axe or that chainsaw. It's in my present moment right now. Now I can choose to pick up that chainsaw or that axe and meet destiny by using my free will to start to cut down these trees, to start to see what is additionally down this path. Or I can choose to be afraid and to not want to embrace change, and I'm going to just not touch the chainsaw or the axe, and I'm going to just either stay stuck here forever at a impasse, forever at the dead end, or I'm going to turn around and go back the other way and possibly not learn anything new about myself, not continue to see where my path will lead. Because we will always have obstacles like that put in our place, but we will always be given by Spirit the tools needed to engage with that obstacle to continue to push us forward. And that's exactly what you're being asked to keep in mind here. The miracles are endless. It may seem that you're at an impasse now, maybe with your new truth. You're like, how can I engage with this? What am I supposed to do with it? Well, open yourself up to, every time you take action this week, think about that truth and think about how the actions you're taking are helping to support and engage that truth with your current present day moment. All right, now for the last card here, we are going to engage with the core principle of contemplation. Contemplation allows us to continue to self-educate through direct experience. This is where we get the chance to reflect and to take a look at the consequences of the actions that we chose to take. We get a look at where we were curious. We get to reflect on the actions we took, and we get to see what the consequences were so that we can continue to self-evolve, grow, change through what we discovered there. So for instance, if we notice that through certain actions we get a negative consequence, well, then we can adjust a little bit and go back and say, okay, well, I'm going to take a slightly different, I'm going to go back to being curious about what's going to happen if I take a slightly different action the next time. So that helps prevent us from staying stuck. It's also what allows us to, when we think about contemplation, it isn't about just that dedicated, okay, I'm going to build in 30 minutes twice a week to meditate. Contemplation is something we should be actively engaging with. Sorry guys, I have an itch. We should be actively engaging with at all times throughout the day. This is how we can learn to think quickly on our feet, to adapt, and to be able to, in the moment, reflect on something that just happened. So active contemplation, again, is how we can become highly adaptive to change. It's where we get to engage with new ideas, and it keeps us aware. This is really our center of awareness here, is through contemplation. All right, what does Cancer need to know for All right, you guys got quite a few cards, but I'm going to take them all. All right, we have a change in the wind, number 12 breaking down to a 3, and we have flexible, number 19, breaking down ultimately to a 1. Well, Cancer, I think this just sums us up perfectly. There is a change coming. There is this quality here coming through for me, just in these other two cards, that there is a change that's coming both externally, but that's also happening internally for you. And that there's this quality of wanting to remain flexible. So when I was just talking about contemplation, about how it can keep us adaptable in the moment, that's exactly what I think you guys are being asked to do here, is to become comfortable with this new truth, with this new perspective, so that with whatever is coming down your way, that you are able to adapt with it, to flow with it, because this is what Spirit is pushing you to do. It's pushing you to, so for instance, going back to, let's say, being a new mother. Well, I have to become comfortable with being a new mother. I have to be aware of the changes that this is going to involve and create in my life. Now, let's say I am thinking about moving into a larger home location. Now, let's say all of a sudden, so I'm thinking about it, and all of a sudden, out of the blue comes this opportunity to, maybe I have a friend, somebody who's like, hey, you know what? We have a job move that came out of the blue, and we have a home that we want to rent. Would you guys want to be able to move into it? You'll have to move though within the next 2 weeks, because we can't just leave it vacant. Well, this is where now you're like presented with an opportunity, presented with a decision to take action, to say, okay, here's the opportunity. Here's the axe or the chainsaw to help chop down the trees, to help clear your path forward. You're being given that golden opportunity. But are you going to choose to be flexible and be able to change everything very quickly to be able to take advantage of this opportunity coming in for you? And you might at first be scared to do that. Again, change is scary. But there's this component here where it's almost like you have to learn how to express almost to yourself this new truth, so that when this change comes, you're ready to say yes. You're ready to be flexible. You're ready to be able to, okay, maybe I can only go with one packed bag. This can also be, if you just think about it, somebody saying, hey, do you want to go backpacking through Europe with me? I have an opportunity. You have to say yes, and you have to be ready to leave by Friday. And this is for, maybe you've been dreaming and wishing and hoping for this to happen. And the new truth you've been sitting with is, gosh, I can't sit in front of a desk for 8 hours a day, for 40 hours. I need to get out and experience the world. And here falls in your lap this opportunity. But you have to move now. You have to be flexible. It might not look exactly like what you were imagining. It might not be the beautiful tour of Italy that you were fantasizing about. But it's an opportunity that's coming in specifically to allow you to tap into that truth, that new perspective, that new wish or hope or dream that's coming through for you. So this week for contemplation, it's all about reflecting on your new truth and actually reflecting on the fear of change and being able to really realize that things are changing for you. When your perspective changes and your truth changes, well, naturally, with that internal change, your external world will shift as well. Again, you're being asked to knock those trees down, and that is an external change. That's going to be the same thing here. Something's going to be asked to be let go of, and you're going to have to be ready to say yes, to fearlessly remember that miracles are endless, and you're being fully supported by the universe, so that even though it seems scary, this is where you're being asked to go. This is where the illumination is going to come down as to where this new truth is going to help fit into you continuing on your path, continuing to connect and engage with your spiritual purpose. All right, Cancer. You guys have had just some of the most powerful readings over the past couple months. Love them, love them, love them. I hope you do as well. I look forward to reading for you guys again next week. If you'd like to book a personal tarot reading or a one-on-one coaching session, the link to my website is in the description box below. And obviously, I do appreciate very much any likes or subscribes, but they are not necessary. I just truly enjoy being able to read for you guys. All right. Have a great rest of your day, and I look forward to your next reading. Bye, Cancer.